Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Covert, and you are watching At Home with Symphoria. And I'm here with Karen Veverka, who is the conductor of our Symphoria Youth Repertory Orchestra. And she's here to share with us about what's going on with her and the things that she does in this world. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to participate in this event, which I think you've done such a great job with.
Thank you.
I feel like I know the orchestra better now from watching some of your work.
Well, and that's what everyone says, like, oh, I knew that the musicians were cool, but I didn't know how cool they were, which I agree with. Like, I've learned so much about my colleagues in doing this. It's so fun. I feel sometimes guilty that this is my job right now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your role as the conductor, as an SYO conductor, and what you do?
Okay, well, the SYRO is the second of the two full orchestras that our youth orchestra program offers. And our orchestra is designed to be sort of a typical high school youth orchestra. I think when we formed, we constructed the idea of having an orchestra where most high school kids could have a great orchestral experience and, really learn some of the repertoire for the first time in some cases, and then, build their capacity and build their ability to then become members of SYAO, which is a little more intense, a little more longer rehearsals, builds the technique and the orchestral repertoire even further.
Mm-hmm. And I will say I have personal experience with the SYRO because my son, who is going into ninth grade, was in eighth grade last year, was the assistant principal trumpet in the SYRO, and he had a blast. He was so disappointed that we weren't able to have our last concert and our side-by-side. I was disappointed.
I was disappointed too, because I was really, looking forward to that side by side, and it was kind of a cool thing because Lana Stafford scheduled it, at the end of the year, which I thought was a really nice culminating activity.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you who aren't sure what we're talking about, the side by side, each one of our top two orchestras in SYO have a side by side concert with Symphoria musicians. And so we're sitting in the section with the kids, playing along with them. And it's these two side-by-side concerts that we do are some of my favorite because it just like the energy just feels like alive and tingly because the kids are so excited and nervous, and it's just really fun.
My job, I'm sorry, you asked about my job is to obviously conduct the group and rehearse them every Sunday. And have these performances as goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you, that is not your only job, right? What else do you do?
I'm also teach high school orchestra in Skinny Atlas. I've just finished, I won't say, my 29th year there. So I've been there for quite a while. I've had a wonderful experience there. So much support and the ability to get involved with the Skinny Atlas Festival over the years, which has also been a great part of my career. And I'm also a professional violinist. I've been playing with Symphoria ever since it's was SSO back in the 80s. So I feel like a lifelong member in some ways.
Mm-hmm. You said you came here when you were just 25. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, when I was 25, I had been playing violin professionally. I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. And when I finished undergrad school, I had been in orchestra and participated, and I felt such a loss when I didn't have my college orchestra anymore. So I auditioned for Omaha Symphony, and I got into that orchestra. At the time, there was also Lincoln Symphony and Nebraska Chamber Orchestra. So I kind of started my professional playing career in those three ensembles. And then I got itchy to move somewhere where there were actually more playing opportunities than those two orchestras in the state. And so I saw an ad one day in Professional International Musician, and it said Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, Masters in Performance Fellowship. So the first thing I had to do was look on a map to see where Syracuse actually was. And I didn't know it was in the Finger Lakes. I didn't really know too much about the area. But I was very determined, and I realized after I'd done some research that the orchestra was at that time a really major symphony orchestra. So I came out and I auditioned for the principal violist at the time, who was all of the principals at that time taught at the university. And they were kind of spearheading this program, which was called the String Fellowship Program. So I came out in August and auditioned and was granted a fellowship. And so for the next 2.5 years, I studied with the concertmaster at the time, who was Andy Zeplatinsky, and got to know many of the Symphoria members. You know, some of them are still here. And so I completed my master's in performance degree, and then took some orchestral auditions. And I had a wonderful experience when I was about 29 years old, going to the LA Phil Institute, which at that time we kind of called it the West Coast, Tanglewood West Coast. And it was a fantastic experience orchestrally. It really gave me a window into the whole experience. And we were so fortunate because we got to play with conductors like Nima Yervi and Leonard Slatkin, and I played with Simon Rattle before he was Sir. So that was really kind of my intro into the beginning of my teaching career. And then shortly after that experience, I started teaching strings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think it's always so interesting for music teachers that they have sort of this dual life. I think most music teachers are performers in one way or another, and they are teachers. And I'm curious to know, how do you balance that?
It's tricky, and it's especially tricky when you're teaching 5 days a week and then you're doing Sundays with Symphoria. And so the day off in that week is generally where I study my scores a lot on that Saturday before rehearsal. And it's really, in a certain way, my job at school is very refueling for me, because I teach both middle and high school orchestras. And so if I get, a little squirrely with the middle school kids, the high school kids knock me right back into a higher reality, and vice versa. So when I finish the week at work, then I get to the luxury of spending some time with these scores and, learning the various aspects of them and how I'm going to present that rehearsal on Sunday to the kids. And, those Sunday rehearsals with youth orchestra feed me also for the next week of teaching. It's kind of like a back and forth pleasure,
Yeah.
It gives me inspiration. Even though it's a long week and it can be a lot of work at times, but I think the two kind of go together.
Mm-hmm. Well, how lucky are you that you have these jobs that fill you up? Yeah, I love that. I love that. So our last at-home interview was with our board member, Vicki Feldman, and she sent me some questions for you, and I think they're wonderful questions. So I thought that I would sort of dig in. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So did you or do you have a role model that inspires you? Who was it and why?
Well, there are several, I think. As a violinist, I would have to say Hilary Hahn is a real role model for me. Even though she's younger, she spent a large part of her childhood coming to Skinny Atlas and performing with the chamber orchestra. And for years, I played in that chamber orchestra and was accompanying her playing, and and seeing her informally as well, and meeting her parents. And I just felt like her playing was so pure, and it gave me a lot of inspiration for my own playing. And in terms of conducting, I would say when I first came here, the SSO was under the direction of Kazuyoshi Akiyama, who is a Japanese conductor, and just could say so much with such little gesture. But it was really almost more about the presence he had on the podium than, almost anything else. And the combination of the flawlessness with his technique and his personality was a huge inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I hear what you're saying about guest artists. I know that there are a few that have come to play with Symphoria that have really stuck out in my mind as like, I want to emulate something that they're doing. I'm thinking about David Schifrin, the clarinetist who was here. He played Mozart with us several years ago. And I just remember sitting in the orchestra and I'm listening and I'm playing my part, and I'm resting. And I just thought, he's giving himself permission to play as soft as he wants, to take as much time as he wants. Like I was so blown away. So I think we do learn a lot just by like sitting in the presence of
Absolutely. Yeah.
great artists. I love that. What's your favorite thing to do when you have free time, which it sounds like you don't have very much?
No, I've had the most free time probably in a long time since March.
Right.
For obvious reasons, but I like to read and I like to keep up a lot with current events. I think in another life, if I weren't a musician, I might have gone to law school because I really enjoy not only the aspect of the law, but also the political scene. And both of my parents were veterans of World War II. They met during World War II, and they were each in the Navy in separate locations. And so that background of my upbringing has always given me that certain focus towards current events and the world stage and that kind of thing. So that's my other interest, and I love following and keeping up on all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's certainly a lot to follow these days, isn't there? For better or for worse. If you could live anywhere, where would that be?
Wow, that's a hard question. I think for a number of years, I'd love to live in Europe, Western Europe. I'd love to live in Paris or Switzerland, probably, and just soak up the culture. And I used to tell my students that my idea of a retirement that would be ideal would be to go to Switzerland and play in some chamber orchestra and just absorb and make music.
Mm-hmm. Well, start making plans, eh?
I will.
Yeah. What is something that would surprise people to know about you?
Would surprise people. Probably that I've known Greg Wood the longest, probably of anybody in the orchestra, and he did a stint studying to become a teacher, and he student taught with me.
Oh, fun! I didn't know that about either of you.
I mean, he has since gone back to performing and his teaching career, which I think he's a marvelous teacher and musician. But when I was younger, when I first came to SU and the symphony, I would play for him sometimes just to take an audition to get his critique. And he actually is one of the people that informed my own teaching style. He was always very positive and very encouraging, but could always pinpoint the needed improvements, the things that were necessary for me to improve about my playing. And I always valued the way he delivered that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been kind of fun, having him as a friend and also having Mark come to school I've had him 3 times now. And so I guess, that would be something that maybe people didn't realize.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that. And I agree that Greg is a wonderful teacher, and that finding the balance point of delivering constructive criticism in a way that students really receive it is an art. For sure. For sure. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being here with us today. For those of you who are watching, post any questions that you have for Karen in here, and she'll pop back in and answer them for you. And you can look forward to another At Home with Symphoria interview coming your way soon. Take care, everyone.